Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chop It Up. Today, we'll be discussing some issues that are very important to Michelle. And as usual, we've got Urbano, JR. I wonder where Barry's at. As I was saying, we have Urbano.
Is Barry on the street?
Yes.
Barry's on the street.
Paging Dr. Barry. Dr. Barry, report to medical. All righty. Now, we have a full complement of panelists this morning. And we've got Michelle, we've got Urbano, Radical Take Rebus, and Dr. Barry Stevens. Good morning, Barry.
Yeah. Good morning.
Barry, our man on the street. You look like you're investigating Walmart this morning.
Lowe's.
Lowe's. Well, there it is then. The place for home improvement.
Yeah, we're 10 hunting.
Yes.
We got a barbecue Saturday.
Ooh.
And y'all invited.
You're having a barbecue?
I'm invited. I'm all the way up in North Florida.
Michelle, look, Michelle can't get there, so just tell him I'll get your piece.
Just put me on a Zoom.
All right. We'll zoom in.
Carry me around on a selfie stick.
All righty. Well, is there anything immediate at Lowe's you would like to talk about, Barry?
Yeah. They don't have the tents right where I can get to them as soon as I get in the door and check them out.
Out of control.
Yeah. All righty. Speaking of out of control, Michelle, you've got something important to talk about this morning, don't you?
I have something I would like to bring up. I watched a lot of the channels, and one of the channels was talking, because there's this big push right now to defund the police. And this particular YouTube channel was saying, no, don't defund the police because, who am I going to call if my daughter's being raped in the living room? Well, first off, I want to go over how the police don't really help with rape. What they do is kind of, it doesn't work. It's not working. And so I wanted to bring that up. Okay. First off.
Hold on a second. Just before we get into that, I would like to make a brief statement about this whole shock and fear campaign regarding defunding the police. For everyone who lives in a city, if your police department is disbanded, because first things first, all the police departments are incorporated, they're businesses, and if they become disbanded or defunct or whatever you want to call it, the county sheriff will maintain jurisdiction of your neighborhood. It's happened in Broward in several places. So it's not like if the police department is defunded that it's going to be the wild, wild west where you live and nowhere else. So the county sheriff will be the one maintaining jurisdiction. So this whole thing about losing police is just a clutch grab, knee jerk, trying to scare the people in line strategy that they're just using right now. So now that we've just done away with that crap, let's move on to something more important, like Michelle's take. Here we go.
Okay. So the whole thing is I was listening to that and I was like, well, first off, when we have caught people in the act of raping somebody, there still has been no positive outcome, i.e. Brock Turner. They actually walked in on the rape, the person being raped, and that person, the whole thing went to trial, which is a rarity, that a rape perpetrator is actually brought to trial. And that person was still found not guilty. So that right there shows it doesn't matter if police are involved. There's still the whole criminal justice system and the court system and prosecutors that don't treat rape victims well. Second off, even with police, there was that whole case, I think it was in Washington, where this girl reported her rape to the police. They called her a liar. They charged her with lying about her rape. And then it turned out she was raped by a serial rapist. So even when there is a report to the police, it's oftentimes not believed by the police, and then it is not followed up by the police. Or if it is followed up, it's minimized, there's not people appropriately trained, all this other kind of stuff. And they found that out because there was another police department that actually did a decent job and found out, did the rape kit, all that other stuff. And they actually tested that rape kit. Holy shit. So that's another issue too. is we have all these rape kits that are backlogged. They have, I looked at the stats this morning. It was something crazy that we have thousands upon thousands of rape kits that have never been tested. So why are we even calling in the police for this? They say that they're going to do these things. They say that they're going to investigate, and then they don't do something as simple as testing the rape kits.
Right.
And that right there, they say one of the reasons that they don't test it is cost. So if you defund the police and you put this money into actually testing the rape kits, perhaps we might actually get some rapists prosecuted and actually convicted. I don't know. That's just crazy talk. Then when I looked at the stats, out of 1,000 sexual assault victims, 995 perpetrators walk free. 995 perpetrators walk free.
That's
of the 1,000 sexual assaults, of the sexual assaults, only 230 are actually reported to the police.
Now, let me have
those 230,
I have a question. Do you think in a lot of these jurisdictions that the entire investigative process could be improved with a centralized rape investigation bureau, like maybe a county-wide bureau that investigates and processes all the rape investigations? Would that make it more efficient if all the rape kits went to the same place and were tested instead of, because maybe it's a situation where these small jurisdictions just don't allocate funds.
No, these are cities.
Oh.
These are cities. These are major cities. These aren't just like your small little counties. These are major cities where they're sitting.
So is this sexism? Is this just inherent sexism that because it's women that they're not pursuing it? I mean, there's a comedian that says if men ovulated, there'd be a 3-week work month and everybody would get a week off if men were the ones who had a period. So, I mean, is this a situation where guys are just callous towards the needs of women?
There could be that, but there's also where one of the big things that they say that the rape tests are not tested is because of funding.
Yeah, well, I mean, how in the hell is that? Well, as I said, do we need more women on the allocation committees? More people that are going to treat rape like a crime? You can't even say women.
You have some women that are just as bad as the men. They perpetuate these systems. They do the same exact thing. They don't believe women. They put down women. So, just having women on board doesn't mean that there's going to be equality. We had talked about Phyllis Schlafly, whatever her name is. She was a big advocate of women not having rights. She was a lawyer that fought against the Equal Rights Amendment. So just because you are a female does not mean that you are on the side of females and female rights.
Man. That's crazy.
Well, I find it hard to believe that we're talking about these rape kits not being tested. I thought for sure that if any crime is committed and they forward evidence to confirm or at least process the crime itself, why are these kits not being tested? It obviously has nothing to do with money.
They are saying it is money. They are saying it is money. They are repeatedly saying it's money. And this is also the crazy part too, is some jurisdictions with some areas, they actually make the woman pay for her rape exam.
That's
when
insane.
she goes to the hospital. I know. So that
Something
whole
else.
thing, like the police coming in for a rape, what for? If the female is having to pay for her rape kit, if there is, and then the rest of the stats, so 1,005 cases, out of 1,000 cases, only 5 of them will lead to a felony conviction.
That's incredible. I had no idea.
So the whole thing is, and these are all statistics from RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. So their whole thing is to advocate for rape victims to be able to, stay safe, get treatment, all this other stuff.
And you said that one of these guys was a serial rapist?
Yeah, they did a documentary on it. on Netflix. But before that, there was a whole article. It was by ProPublica, and they do a lot of investigative journalism. And if you watch this documentary, it just breaks your heart how they victim blamed, how they went after this girl, how they said that she was a liar. They actually prosecuted her for lying. And it turned out she was not lying. And in fact, the DNA evidence, when it was finally tested, this person was linked to another rape in another county. And because there's this lack of communication between different counties and different jurisdictions, it took a while for that even to come about.
Wow.
So this whole thing that called the police if there's a rape, once again, what for? 5 cases will lead to a felony conviction.
That's crazy. And
I know. So FYI, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
Let me just up,
Barry, what is your take on this?
And another aspect I look at is, how about the innocent guys? If they don't test those rape kits, what about the innocent guys that go to prison that were lied on?
Well, hell.
The DNA evidence never get it evidence.
According to Michelle, that may be 2 of the 5 guys because.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But FYI, there's another interesting case. I follow a lot of criminal justice stuff. Right. They have the Innocence Project. I think everybody knows about the Innocence Project. If you don't, go look it up. Everybody on here is going to know about the Innocence Project.
Yeah.
They have one guy where
hold on a second. Though. Wait a second. Just wait a second. The Innocence Project is I'm sure it's a nonprofit organization that works toward exonerating inmates, offenders, defendants who have been falsely convicted, and they usually do it by unearthing DNA evidence and support, because DNA technology and science is always evolving. So there are a lot of cases where either the DNA evidence has proven to be flawed over time, or the entire judicial process was conducted without the benefit of any DNA evidence. So the Innocence Project makes a great effort toward bringing this new DNA evidence to light and hopefully exonerating people who have been convicted wrongly. They've gotten a lot of guys off death row. They've got a lot of guys free from life sentences that were imposed for crimes that they are actually innocent of. That's why it's called the Innocence Project. Moving right along.
One thing I want to interject about the Innocence Project, and remember, you touched on, but just to make it clear, the reason why they have the Innocence Project, why the name is Innocent, is because they are contesting they're saying that you're actually innocent, not that they find you not guilty.
No, innocent. That if you're innocent. I mean, they're not going to say, oh, you were charged with attempted murder, it should have been aggravated battery or anything like that. It's a situation where a guy has either been convicted of sexual battery, murder, something very serious, and they work towards exonerating the inmate, the offender, the defendant, whatever you want to call him, and proving that he is, quote, innocent of the crime that he was charged and convicted. So, moving right along.
So the case that I bring up, and this has to do with the rape and the, unjustly incarcerated when you're actually innocent. They had a case, I think it was out of Virginia, where the woman, and this is where they had the fault in eyewitness testimony. She had been raped. She had been raped by a black gentleman. And I call him a gentleman because, no, never mind. The one that raped him was not a gentleman. Let's be clear. The one that was...
the accused was a black gentleman.
The one that was accused was a gentleman.
Right.
So he had been, based on her testimony, on her eyewitness testimony, she had said this was the person that raped her. Well, he adamantly denied it. And there was some conflicting evidence that he wasn't there at the time, but they still convicted him anyway based on her eyewitness testimony. Right. And that also speaks to cross-racial identification. White people have a hard time identifying black people properly. Black people have a hard time identifying white people properly, Hispanic people, all that stuff. Right. Cross-racial identification is much harder than in your race. So that's an issue. But the whole thing is with this one, once again, he was falsely accused, and it was the DNA evidence that exonerated him.
Sure.
Hence the need for DNA test kit. And the guy that actually did it, he was in prison for another crime or maybe rape. I don't remember which one. I didn't really pay attention to his case because he was not a gentleman. He was a son of a bitch.
So in this case, it turned out that the man actually did not have sexual relations with the woman.
Nope. Nope. And eyewitness testimony said he did, because once again, there's that issue with identification across race.
Also, a lot of times these identifications are flawed because the police will slant you toward it. You know, they have a defendant in custody, they have a suspect in custody for something else, and they'll go to the victim and say, listen, we believe we've got your guy. We believe we've caught him. You know, so they're already starting the process to convince them that this is the guy who did it. You know what I mean? I've read so many cases where the ID was flawed and they end up going back. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And now the two of them, he got exonerated, and the two of them travel around the country to talk about wrongful conviction and this issue in the justice system.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, he has every right to be bitter, and he's like, I'm not bitter. There's no point to it.
I noticed, I keep going back in my mind where you said that there was a serial rapist. And to me, I just can't see how, because, you know, for somebody to get away with something that many times, there's got to be just a systemic failure, because a guy can maybe this time get an investigative officer who's busy or who, you know, doesn't put a lot of weight behind rape allegations or something like that. But for it to go on more than one time or several times in several jurisdictions, then, I mean, what are the odds that he's going to get a lazy detective on 4 different cases in 4 different places? You know, so that is that's indicative of a systemic failure.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I think there could be a parallel to, remember back when everybody was going crazy about the driving under the influence, DUIs, or however you want, different, you know, jurisdictions call it different things, but they weren't sharing that information. So there was guys, they were actually killing people, had priors 20, 30 DUIs, but they were not sharing this information. So it's the same thing.
But see, hold on a second. An issue with the DUI when it began, you have to think about this. There was a cultural desensitivity for DUIs because who hasn't driven with a buzz? You show me a judge, you show me a cop, you show me a school teacher, anybody who didn't drive drunk. You know what I'm saying? I'll be right back.
And they drive better.
Wow. But see, he's going to the point that I was making, because it's the culture that is involved in that. First of all, drinking is legal, and then it's very subjective to saying, well, how many drinks can I have before I'm impaired? And of course, we know medical-wise is that it depends on your body type, how big you are, how much it takes for you to process this, you know, alcohol and all that. Yeah, all those things. But what I want to make the parallel to this rape situation, it's the same thing. Let's just say that the majority of the people that are investigating the cops are male, and they have people claiming that they have been raped or assaulted, and they look at their background or how they dress or how they look and say, well, I don't think she was raped. Again, it's already subjective. If you're not here as a police officer or detective, whatever, to make that decision, your decision should be factual. If a person claims that they were raped, then they should be afforded all the opportunities of investigation and everything. Because if it turns out it's not true, then still have a remedy. You can charge that person with falsifying or making allegations of a false assault or rape. So there's still something on the back end. But if you already have the inertia and say, well, I just don't believe this girl was raped.
Yep.
But for the most part, now, if you bring, and when I use the word girl, I normally just mean female. But if you actually bring a girl, and when I mean that, 18 or under, by law, that takes on a different situation altogether because they're minors. And most guys can say, well, if I had a daughter and, you know, she was this age, I would definitely want to find out she was raped. And they could go on. But out of 1,000 cases, I wonder how many of those cases involve minors.
I'm not sure because I didn't look that up, but that is a point. But at the same time, we even know children are less likely to report because they're afraid they're not going to be believed. And that's part of the manipulation of the perpetrator, but it's also a belief. They see this. They see people not be believed. Children are sponges. Especially like teenage girls, they tend to also blame themselves a lot. Once again, I work with trauma, I work with rape victims, and a lot of the clients that I have, they haven't reported because they blame themselves for the rape because that's basically the MO of the culture we live in. Is that you wore this, you engage in this behavior, and I have to keep reiterating that engaging that behavior does not equal rape. Like, you know, that's just not the case. Like, rape is a crime.
Yeah. If you choose to have, if you, as a young woman or a girl or just a female, if you decide to have multiple sex partners, you're entitled to that. If no means no and yes means yes.
Pretty much.
And I think that's one of the things. But I think we can attach this to a bigger thing because I also spoke with Robert the other day and said that I wanted to talk about this defunded. But remember, it's not just defunding the police. They talk about dismantling the police also. And I truly believe that most of these people think, and once again, I would say they're liberals, they think it's a good thing to not have police. But I'm being serious because they're idealistic. But think about it. If we have no police force, then it's chaos. Every person to himself.
Listen, right now you're getting caught up. You are getting caught up in their hysteria. There will never be a time that we live without the police. I think they need to disband every city and every county jurisdiction, and we need to have a state police force. If I could go one better, I would like to have one state police force for all 50 states. We don't need all these different jurisdictions pissing on each other's feet and getting in each other's way. That it would be a whole lot better if we just had one police department, at least one for every state.
Now, in the Tallahassee, we have the Florida State Police Department, like the Florida University Police Department. Mm-hmm. Then it's Florida State, FSU. Florida State University has their own police department.
Yes, most colleges do.
Yep, so you have a college, then you have TPD, you have Tallahassee, then you have Leon County, and then you have the state police, you have FDLE.
Right, and as
then
was
you have
made,
the highway patrol.
As was made very clear during the Jameis Winston situation at FSU, you had a whole bunch of police departments that really didn't do a damn thing.
Not a free university, free shoe university, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, you know, all this no police, defunding the police department in no way means no police. It just means not that police department. And I really believe that it would be better off. I mean, there's a lot of things about big government that I don't agree with, but big government for jurisdiction as far as law enforcement, I do agree with. Because I think there would be a better continuity if it was just one department.
Yeah.
And their standards would be better. You know what I mean? I really think that law enforcement here needs to have an extended education period before they're certified. You have certain countries that require 2 and 3 years. And they're here in America, I mean, the FBI wants you to have like an AA, but the county...
FBI requires a master's degree.
Well, see that? And the county doesn't. The county just requires you to pass a piss test, a background check, and have a GED.
And I think a good model of that, if I'm not mistaken, it was Camden, New Jersey. They were one of the most corrupt, most violent police, and they defunded, and they did away with all the union officers, rehired. But and see, this is what I think most people misunderstand. Not only did they defund and dismantle the police force, and contrary to popular opinion, they brought back a bigger force, better trained, and now they have they're one of the top models of policing in the country.
Yeah.
Hence, you don't hear them, all this police brutality and all this other crazy stuff that was going on, because they trained, more training, and like I said, they did away with the big union. They've been there for years and was really just letting people get away with literally murder.
Yeah.
Now, I can't speak specifically about Camden and what they did after the defunding, but I can speak about what the goal is with the defunding. It's to put money into other programs that actually address crime,
Right.
that actually fix root causes. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be awesome.
I think another thing, but they did it on the Florida. I mean, they did it on Department of Corrections, and it's a model for the whole country. Is Texas? Texas, the feds took over, and they never went back. So I think if you write to DOC in Texas, is something that still has a federal name to it. But
I don't think so.
Yes, look it up. But anyway, here's the thing: what they did, they took the majority. Remember, they were second to California, and just like here in Florida, they were in the billions of dollars of their budget, and they took that money and put it on the front end, which was probation, other programs to stop you from going to prison, all these things.
Yeah, pretrial interventions.
Right. But it all started with their speaker of the house over there. He just said the bottom line. He said, "I'm not giving you any more money. That's it. We're not going to fund this thing anymore. You got to find out what you got to do."
It's a good thing you started talking about prisons. I'd like to segue, which is a radio and TV term, a media term, meaning to go from one subject to another smoothly. I want to talk about something about the Florida Department of Corrections. Recently, a friend of mine, inmate, got into some trouble and had an altercation with the staff, and there was an issue about him being handled roughly after he was handcuffed. And I would like to share some information. If anybody is having an issue at the institutional level regarding the treatment of your loved ones or friends, family members, however you want to call it, and you feel frustrated when communicating with the institutional staff, go online, Google Inspector General of Florida, and you will come to an electronic complaint form where you fill it out and file it with the Office of the Inspector General directly. The Office of the Inspector General, while they are part of the Department of Corrections, they actually operate outside of the chain of command or the levels of authority at the institution and within the department. So if you have a problem and you're frustrated by the lack of communication, the lack of effort at the institutional level, please go to the website, go to your Google search for Inspector General of Florida. You'll find the link, fill out the form, and log your complaint. Please, don't let someone at the institutional level frustrate you to the point where you give up. Never give up. Always find a way to overcome someone else's incompetence or someone else's stall tactics or whatever the case may be, if you're not satisfied, find out who you can contact at the department administrative level. And in that case,
And don't give up at the IG either,
no.
because the IG can be just as corrupt as DOC.
Sure.
We found that one out too.
Yes, but it starts
But
an
follow
electronic,
the chain.
it starts an electronic trail, you know, and always it's going to ask if you want to be contacted. I recommend you always ask to be emailed, because an email is subject to discovery and subpoena later on. It supports your position. If you ask and allow them to telephone you, then all it will show on the record is that there was a call made and there's no record of what was said and what was spoken. So always strive to receive an email. That way you have it for your own record keeping.
Yep. Because there was a whole issue with the IG out in the Panhandle,
Sure.
where an IG had done a whistleblower case because he had been telling some of the stuff the IG was doing. There was that one inmate that got gassed to death. I think it was at Franklin, I want to say. And the IG investigated and found no wrongdoing or something like that. And then the other IG was like, that's bullshit. And so then there was like, the IG can be just as slimy as DOC at times.
Of course.
Like but then you can, once you start that whole, communication and going up the chain of command, you can involve your legislator.
Yes.
Call the legislator too.
But remember also is to preserve and go through the proper procedures, because hopefully you go to the judicial system and have a lawsuit, and the very first thing that they can dismiss that case, not based on merits, but procedurally.
Yep.
And you didn't do the right thing.
Of course.
So that's
because
important.
that's always the first step. If your procedures are flawed, then they never have to address the merits. Why should they address the merits when you didn't bring the argument the right way?
Yep. And so, but I just say that so that way, not to discourage people, but to just, prep them that even with that, you're going to more likely not have to go up even further. Right. But you, like Robert said, and just like Reba said, is that and Barry, you're quiet.
Barry's shopping, man. Barry's over there shopping. See, listen.
I don't want all the Walmart noises, so I can't mute it.
Listen.
That's fair.
Barry is looking for barbecue stuff. And that's really high up for a guy. You know what I mean? So I understand he doesn't want to be distracted.
And he really wants to chop it up, but not this kind of chop it up. He's chopping up something else.
I plan on stopping by the barbecue, so I want him to be focused. I want him to do his thing. And listen, and while we're talking food, I want you to know, I'm definitely not a serial rapist, but I do fancy myself to be somewhat of a serial killer, because Lucky Charms, Fruity Pebbles, Raisin Bran, I will knock all that shit to the land. You know what I'm saying? Every bit of it. You put a bowl of cereal in front of me, it's going down.
So Barry, that right there just brings cereal to the barbecue. Robert will be fine.
Yeah, I'll do the cereal. Yeah, I'll do it.
I can see that. Get you a box of Frosted Flakes and some Lucky Charms.
Oh yeah, listen, Frosted Flakes, they're great.
Yeah, they actually are great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I only
right.
bring that up so that way people are, prepared for the rest of the battle.
Of course. We're at minute 45. Michelle, you ready?
Ooh. All right. Well, if you like this, please go ahead, like, subscribe, and share. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. We try to answer them. If you have any topics that you would like us to speak about, please go ahead and leave them in the comment section. Also, our contact information, if you'd like to speak to either one of us individually, our contact information is in the About section. And last but not least, if you need any help with the grievance process, if you need any help figuring out how to handle issues with the Department of Corrections, you can reach out to us. All of us are familiar with the grievance process and how to write a good grievance and the chain of command to follow. So you can shoot us an email or leave a comment.
And if you're going to visit your loved ones, when you're out there standing in line in the visiting park line, let everybody else know that we're here too. You know what I mean? I know you've got your little visit groups who you see every week and you talk to out there in line. Let them know that we're here and that we want to help.
Yes. For real.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
See you later.
Those-
Bye-bye.